I'm Phillip Sterling. I'll be reading from my short story collection, In Which Brief Stories Are Told, published by Wayne State University Press. The story is titled Deja Vu. Years after his father died at Deja Vu nursing home, where the elder Parker was housed after Alzheimer's turned his memory to a kind of store-brand tartar sauce, Robbie Parker Jr. could not navigate a shopping cart down the seafood aisle of a grocery store without thinking of the night his father had taken him smelting on Crystal Lake. He'd been roused from a dreamless sleep, snugged into snowsuit and boots, then driven to the boat launch and out onto the ice, to a shanty that, despite its pink color in daylight, darkened the papery surface of the lake like a stubby black crayon. He'd never been out so late before, nor would he ever again fill a cooler with so many fish in such little time. During the run, he'd been so busy resetting the hooks on his line that he'd not had time for the thin, bitter cocoa his father had brought in the thermos, nor the popcorn his mother had sent in a butter-stained grocery sack. Afterward, the spirits of their breathing paused above the taillights as his father stowed the auger and buckets in the trunk. Robbie shivered. The moonlight was unreal, like night scenes in Lassie episodes on their black and white TV, shadows as pronounced as the silhouettes he'd made at Vacation Bible School one Father's Day. The car, however, was warm and close, heady with the smells of fish, kerosene, and cigars. The smells of men, thought Robbie. On the way home, he could barely keep his eyes open. He blew a peephole through the frost on the Mercury's passenger window and calculated how soon he'd cuddle with the green satin-edged blankie that waited in the warmth of his bed. "Did you have fun?" his father asked suddenly. "Yes, sir," Robbie said. It was remarkable that his father was able to drive at all. While the moon assured for the world at large a visibility as faithful as that of a nightlight in his small bedroom, Robbie could barely make out the road. Snow swirled in the headlights. "Someday, Robbie," his father said, "I'll be a burden on you. You'll have to take care of me, feed me, bathe me, even change my messy pants. Do you know what a burden is, Robbie?" "Yes, sir," he answered. He was very sleepy. "Good," said his father. "That's when I hope you remember tonight." He could recall his mother in her soft nightgown tucking him under his cowboy bedspread, and how he drifted off to the sounds of his parents whispering and laughing as they thumbed the gluey roe from handful after handful of small silver fish. But it was years later, as he priced seafood in the freezer section at Kroger's, that Robbie knew it would happen, exactly as his father had said. I'm Phillip Sterling. That story was Deja Vu, from In Which Brief Stories Were Told, published by Wayne State University Press. My name is Phillip Sterling. I'll be reading from my collection In Which Brief Stories Are Told, published by Wayne State University Press. The story is titled First Response. We'd been back from the warehouse fire about an hour, furniture mostly, second-hand bedroom sets and so-called antiques, the kind that flash faster than scrub pine in a California drought, if you want to talk heat or losses. The new kid, the one they called TP, had already been cleared from the ER for the smoke he ate, and we were washing down the trucks for the second time that shift when I suddenly thought about my first sleepover, or nearly one, and how I had the kid's mom call my dad to come fetch me. It was after 11 and he'd already gone to bed. Still, in 20 minutes, I'm back beneath my covers at home, and the next day Dad acts as if nothing happened, asks me if I had a good time. I guess I'd been scared, though I always claimed uncomfortable when Sis started in teasing me about it in those days. He'd been my best friend. We'd hung out at recess, ate lunch at the same table in the gym, kind of gravitated to each other, often finding ourselves together the last pick for some game or school project. Must have been 4th grade. Funny that it'd come back to me then, of all times, washing down equipment. I hadn't given it a thought for years. Does anyone know the real reason why I couldn't spend the night in that boy's room, a room he'd shared with his younger brother? What was his name? Kenny? Kent something. I don't recall the younger ones. I was cold is all. It was winter. The house was shabby and thin with plastic sheeting in place of storm windows. A week later, the younger one was dead. The boys had been playing along the Muskegon, on the ice, river ice, if you can imagine, and the way it was described in the newspaper when my father read it aloud and asked me if it was the same boy made me think of that movie, It's a Wonderful Life, where the young George Bailey rescues his brother, what's his name? But Kent hadn't done any rescuing that day, unless you count their hockey sticks. His parents moved north shortly after, took him right out of school to be closer to his mother's relatives. Otherwise, we might still be friends. I pull 48s quite frequently now, 72s when some family guy needs a sub. Doesn't matter to me. Sleepovers are just another part of the job. The story is First Response from In Which Brief Stories Are Told by Phillip Sterling, published by Wayne State University Press. My name is Phillip Sterling. I'll be reading from my short story collection, In Which Brief Stories Are Told, published by Wayne State University Press. The title of this story is Coda. Our final tune was always a Sousa march, like the one that goes da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, which Mitch Miller, if you recall, used as a sign-off for his sing-along show. Be kind to your fine feathered friends. I think it was Sousa. Always something loud and upbeat and meant for people to start clapping or pumping their arms like they were drum majors, eventually rising to their feet, a guaranteed standing ovation. I played the trombone. Third chair, though there were only 3 in the pep band, so it didn't matter. We'd play at basketball games, pep rallies, and at least once every winter we'd pack up our instruments and bus over to the state hospital to cheer up the patients. The place stunk. We'd be let in some unmarked service entrance and guided through narrow corridors like we'd come in backstage to some grand concert hall, guards unlocking one steel door after another, locking them again behind us, to a room that reminded me of that crummy gym/auditorium in the old primary school before it was demolished, but with thicker bars over the windows and mangled cages securing the lights, half of which were never lit. We'd sit on unpadded folding chairs organized on the floor, since there were no risers, and use sheet holders instead of music stands, just to be safe. We'd been cautioned. If one of them came onto the stage, which we found funny since we sat on the same level they did on the same kind of chairs, we should just keep playing as if nothing was wrong. And one of the attendants, that's what they were called, not guards, would come and help him back to his seat. Him, because it was just men, every time. The place was segregated. I don't know who entertained the women. And they were harmless, mostly, we were told. Nothing to worry about. Well, we had just begun the march, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, when this guy in a grayish bathrobe comes right up next to me. I was on the outside, being third chair. And he begins mimicking my slide movements, marching around, smiling, then comes close enough to say something to me, though I couldn't hear what with the trumpets and drums. He smelled like puke and urine, but he was smiling. Then off he marches, and I stopped playing to watch. He looked like he needed a good meal and a shave. His face had a kind of scruffy gauntness to it. But he was marching and playing his trombone with an enthusiasm I'd never seen before. He was really enjoying himself. I'd played for 5 years by then, but I knew at that moment that I was done with it. It would never be anything more than a high school memory. I just didn't have the talent. The story is Coda by Phillip Sterling, published in Wayne State University Press, In Which Brief Stories Are Told.